Hello, everybody. We're having some massive negative greeting technical problems. We've had 3 computer failures, and so we're coming in a different way, and David is going to be here very soon. So thank you for your patience. Please let me know. That's one of the main things is the audio going to be good enough? Hear me? Okay. Yes, okay, great. So this is the way we're going to do it today. It's been crazy, literally 3 computer failures and stuff that David has never seen before. The whole system was working just fine until, of course, today, Easter Sunday, when it's the final transmission on Ascension. So this is just something that we are used to dealing with a lot. Whenever we show up to offer really anything in this line of spiritual work, we do get negative greetings, and they range from minor to severe. So David is not happy about having to use the computer camera because he prefers his higher production cameras, but I convinced him that it's all going to be okay and to use this computer camera anyway. So yay. Thank you guys for being patient. I know that you've dealt with some of these negative greetings, and I'm sure that you guys experience this in your life too, when you build up your light and when you are taking a stand and you are speaking for spirit, in alignment with spirit. These things just happen, and so it is part of the ascension path, is to recognize that these challenges will come into our path and into our life. And one of the keys is to meet them with a sense of grace, as much grace as possible, and not get too flustered by them. Don't give too much energy to it, because they're all over the place, these little landmines that try to distract us. I was going to say, I brought some bowls here, some crystal bowls, so I'll play those. I think I hear him coming, but hold on a second. I know, here he is, so. Aha, it's working. It's right, just this one right here. He is almost on his way. I'm gonna start recording here. Now looks like it is recording, very good. All right, with no further ado, here he is.
Well, sorry everybody, I'm very, very upset. We have had a very, very complex, intricate, unbelievably intense series of problems that have made this, basically destroyed our show for today. I don't know what to do here. I'll just tell you what happened, and we'll just figure out what we're going to do. While I was in Sedona, Arizona, my laptop, the one that I would normally use to do these presentations, the HDMI port died. And so what that means is that I could not make slides come out of my laptop for the show. So on stage in front of everyone, I transferred all of the slides over to Elizabeth's laptop, which is the one that we're using now. Even though I had another backup laptop that I have at home, as soon as we tried to run the slides on this laptop, the HDMI port wasn't working, and so the slides were not working. They would just flicker in and out. Then when I transferred the slides over to Elizabeth's laptop, for some reason it changes the formatting on the slides, which now, in light of the massive attack that we're suffering, that's a minor problem. I'm telling people what happened. So I wanted to use the other laptop, my backup laptop. I have 2 identical laptops. And then when I tried to use the other one to solve the HDMI problem, the other one's touchpad literally would not work. And that had been fine up until now. It is jammed, you can't touch it. And even with the touchpad, you can't do a double click, so it's useless. The laptop, both my laptops are broken. So then we had, okay, let's just use Elizabeth's laptop. Well, then of course that changes the font. It changes the whole style of the slide. Then we had this other crazy issue, which is that I have these two spotlights up here to throw the blue colors on the wall. And one of the spotlights died. And not only did it die, but when it died, it threw the surge protector into emergency mode. So we're hearing this screaming sound. This all has just happened in the last like 10 minutes, okay? 15 minutes. It goes into emergency mode, it's screaming. I had to change the bulb in here, which required me to break out the, so we have, I mean, I bought like a whole bunch of these bulbs in case anything ever goes wrong, right? This is the bulb that we need to use inside the spotlight, okay? But the other bulb was in there so bad that I had to nearly break the machine to get it out. I was able to get it out, but it was very, very difficult. So then what else? So we turn on the studio after solving all these problems, going with an alternative laptop, fixing the bulb, nearly breaking the bulb to get it out. Then we turn on the system, which was working fine up until a certain point. And then we find out that there's two more unalterable problems that are happening. Number one, every time I've ever used this setup up until now, we have two different video interfaces. We have the Blackmagic 1080p HD interface, okay? Blackmagic Ultra Studio, okay? And then we also have another one, which is a backup, which is the Avio 4K interface. The Avio isn't quite as good as the Blackmagic Ultra Studio. But if one of them goes down, we have the other one as a backup, right? We'll get a load of this, you guys. The Blackmagic Ultra Studio recorder is not showing any picture in Zoom at all, yet it works in the recording software that we would normally be using, which is Telestream Wirecast. In addition to that, we also are not getting the Avio to work for some crazy reason, which has never happened before. Not only do I have a black screen on my Ultra Studio, I have a split screen into 4 quadrants and all this crazy stuff that you guys might have been seeing on the Avio. So like, we literally now have nothing. We have no ability to use these cameras, even though everything seems to work. And I could record it locally, but I can't do it live, you see. So if I did a local recording, you guys don't get to watch it because it's a totally different thing. So in light of all this crazy stuff, I wasn't even sure if we should do it. I was saying to Elizabeth, maybe we should cancel the show. It is Easter Sunday. I mean, you guys hopefully have another life besides watching this. Or maybe you do. I don't know. I'm sorry if this is all you got going on today, but I want to do something for you. So it's so upsetting. I am just incredibly upset. I mean, my AV guy is crippled, literally cannot walk.
It's okay. This is what it looks like.
That's what it looks like? Okay, yeah. I'm getting a view of it right now.
This is good.
Okay, well, it's not good, but it's acceptable.
I said the sound is great, the slides are great.
I am so sorry, you guys. It really, to me, just shows how insanely powerful the negative is and how amazingly effective it can be at telekinetic interference with our equipment, with our lives, with the things, because I have multiple backup redundant plans. And this attack accumulated over being in Sedona last week. We did everything for you. We had it all pre-taped. It was beautiful. It works. We had our staff air it for us. And then, of course, my laptop dies in Sedona. We have to use Elizabeth's. It screws up the formatting, which is still going to be screwed up now. I'm staggered. I am actually staggered. I've never seen such a powerful, and I can't change the slides. Oh, there we go. It's burning. Okay. I'm burning my own book, so that's good. At least I have the authority to do that. So something else is going on, which I'll just tell you guys about real quick. is that there is this massive, massive attack against me going on. So I want to put this on the record, okay? It's so stupid. It's so stupid to think that, number one, that I would have stolen my friend's money, okay, when he's literally homeless. Why would I take his money? Why would I not give him the $50,000? Okay, he did get the $50,000 and he bought silver with it. And I don't think that was an advisable decision, but that's what he chose to do. I would have liked to have him keep some in the bank, but he doesn't trust banks and he didn't. So look, we know that the nursing home that he was staying at kept most of the silver. We know that another friend of his, who is also a potential insider named John, kept a separate tranche of the silver in his house as a storage to prevent, theft by the potential people at the nursing home. I have now written the GoFundMe people and said that their company is being accused of aiding and abetting in fraud. And they certified to me in writing all of the transfers of the money that went into Pete Peterson's account, to his bank account, not to my bank account. I only was an intermediary to get the money into Pete's account. And then over and above all the stuff that I just said, Pete has gone completely missing. And Elizabeth, you can confirm this as well.
Yeah.
Come on over here, because this is
very,
very serious.
Yeah, I called the nursing home that he was at, the recovery center, and they wouldn't give us any information on him. They just said that
HIPAA regulations prohibit us from telling you where he is.
So he's gone, and
none of his friends know where he is. It's been this way for like 3 weeks. And right after Pete goes mysteriously disappearing, possibly dead,
right,
all of this shit comes out on the internet saying David Wilcox stole Pete Peterson's money. But I can't call Pete Peterson to tell him, please tell everybody that I didn't steal your money, because he might be dead, or we don't know where he is. They could have taken him into an underground base. We don't. The treatment facility won't tell us where he is. We've got people calling his next of kin. It's crazy. So we have no idea what's going on with Pete, except it's very suspiciously timed, because Corey was telling me through some of the briefings that he got, expect a massive attack from the Rockefeller faction. So Elizabeth, tell them what happened right before you flew out to Hawaii, because that's crazy too. I just want you guys to get a sense of the unrelenting scope of what we're going through right now.
Anyway, I was on the airplane, and then we were getting ready to taxi out to the runway, and the entire power system of the airplane went off for about 2 minutes, completely dark. Everything was off. I was near the captain's area, and I heard him yelling at the top of his lungs and swearing and saying, I want to talk to your supervisor. I need to talk to your supervisor right now. So I'm getting worried, because I'm thinking, like, I've never heard the captain of an airplane scream like that. So after that calmed down a little bit, I asked the steward, I said, is there anything wrong with this airplane? And the steward's like, no, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is like shining me on. He thinks that I'm just going to believe that. I asked him a couple more times, and he just brushed it off. So we're taxiing out to the runway, and then we sit on the runway for like 20 minutes. Then we are told that we have to go back, because there's something wrong with the remote control system of the airplane. So we go back to the terminal, and they say, everyone, you can get off of the plane, come back in an hour. We have to reboot the system. So I'm not feeling very confident. And I got David, on the phone, and I said, look, it looks to me that they might be trying to take over the remote control system of this plane. If I go down, know that I love you, because literally, it was just after the 737s went down, and
like a week after we got this murder threat.
Well, right, we get these particular death threats every now and then, but life must go on. You have to continue to live your life. So anyway, I just told David that, and he said, well, I haven't had a dream that you died, so you're going to be okay. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. All right, so I just like, you know, say a prayer to God, and I say, you know what, just take me quick if you're going to have to take me. So anyway, I left it at that. And then you found out more information about what it really was.
Well,
right?
we looked it up. I looked up flight groundings online.
Right.
And it turns out that right when your flight stopped is when nationwide,
Right.
like all the airports, everybody's flights get delayed because they have to update the software.
They had to reboot the remote control system of the plane. And what that means is that people can control the plane, right? Which is why we think the 737s went down. They were taken down because one of them had, what, 20 UN officials on it?
Well, the Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 that crashed had something like 30 different UN officials on it. And nobody talks about that part of the story. You're looking at this plane. If you see the original video, it's literally fighting against somebody trying to make it nosedive. The pilots are fighting to keep it up. The nosedive goes down. We had just gotten this warning saying you're under very, very high assassination threat from the Rockefellers. Beth had to go on this flight without me. And then right as you are, you know, about to take off, the pilot is screaming, all this crazy stuff happens. And then right then, there's a nationwide grounding of flights. And they all have to redo their software to prevent from, basically to prevent from this hacking of flights.
This ability for them to hack the remote control system.
So what I think happened is that they were going to kill you, and the Alliance intervened, and they did it nationwide because that's what was about to happen. You would have been toasted on that plane if they hadn't fixed that problem. I think that's what it was. That's how close we got to the edge on this one.
So yeah, these are the types of things we deal with, brakes going on in our car and stuff. And really, we truly feel it's only because of our angelic protection that we're still around, you know, at this point, being this much in the forefront. And I didn't know what I was marrying into, really. And I for 2 years, I didn't even want people to know we were together, you know, because I didn't want the attacks, you know. And so at a certain point, I had to just allow what is to be revealed clearly. And so, you know, what he's going to talk about too is, you know, really the spiritual dimension of assistance that we have, that we're eternal beings in a light body, and that there's more to this picture than what meets the eye anyway. And so by aligning with the forces of light, by aligning with the angelic forces, the light of the one infinite creator, there is blessing and there is protection, or we wouldn't even be here.
That's true.
Anyway.
So what I will do, you're only going to get a Zoom copy of this because we can't locally record, which means it's not going to look very good. It will never look good. So I'm going to redo all this again. And the first quote that I wanted to bring to your attention regards this idea of know yourself as the creator, okay? And it says, the initiation in the Queen's Chamber, because actually both the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid have initiatory properties. They both can create ascension. So this is a very important point, and I highlighted the part in yellow for a reason. It involves, the initiation in the Queen's Chamber involves the abandoning of the self to such a desire to know the Creator in full, that the purified in-streaming light is drawn in balanced fashion through all the energy centers or chakras, meeting in the inner eye chakra and opening the gate to intelligent infinity. Then true life is experienced, or as your people call it, resurrection. So there you go. This is a very interesting quote that starts off our whole thing, where the point is that in order to reach the touchdown version of ascension, not the field goal, but the touchdown, right? Because we talked about the difference, that the field goal ascension is just going from 3D to 4D. The touchdown is going to a much deeper level, where you are now fully engaged in your light body. So it's pretty amazing when you look at this quote and it says, the abandoning of the self to such a desire to know the Creator in full leads to resurrection. So resurrection is the key here, and that's the resurrection into the light body. That is the Christ ascension, or whatever other religious denomination you want to use for it. So there's a lot of other quotes that we're going to get into in terms of how do you abandon the self. Said you're supposed to abandon yourself. It really has to do with your illusory sense of self, the illusion of you being a separated being, and the illusion that there is not a one infinite creator inspiring and actually the source of your identity. So this is something that the other quotes are going to really touch on as we go along, the idea of what is the self and how does this process work? How does it change you? It's pretty fascinating. So we're going to just keep going here, and I'm going to give you some more stuff. One meets the self in the center, deep. So this is the real self now. This is what they're authentic one self. It is analogous to the burial and resurrection of the body, wherein the entity dies to the self, and through this confrontation of apparent loss and realization of essential gain, is transmuted into a new and risen being. Well, you have to admire the irony of the universe that we have had the total death of the normal way that we would do this. The death of the self, the death of all these things that I've spent many tens of thousands of dollars building in order to be able to do this class. And our assistant, and the laptop, and the bulb on the freaking projector. It's just insane. So, yeah, 3 computers devastated by this attack. So, dying to the self, I guess I'm getting a very dramatic personal reenactment of what that is so that you guys can experience it with us together. I guess I got to get a grip on it. You're happy. I mean, we're at least giving you something. So I'm not perfect, of course, and I never said that I was. I've just never had this much interference. I've never had this level of attack before. But I'm experiencing my own hero's journey right here. I'm experiencing my own death and resurrection. You know, we're using a Mickey Mouse solution, but it is the only way, short of me just canceling. So you're just going to get more free stuff, you know, stuff that you didn't pay for that's added on to the class. So I guess you got to look at it that way. It's ultimately beneficial because it's still, you still get to hear me talk. It's basically, it's just a semi-functional, crappy solution.
Maybe Spirit wants you to channel.
Yeah. So
I would just go with it.
We're going with it. We're doing it. So I guess what we're doing here is we're reenacting this idea of dying to the self, dying to the platform, dying to the way we built this, and then giving you something in comparison. It's kind of like a synchronistic reenactment. But the idea is that you, so what is this quote really talking about? It's talking about the pyramid initiation. Why did Ra build the Great Pyramid? They built the Great Pyramid because it was a temple of initiation. It was a chamber to create ascension in the physical body. It required a certain size of the stone blocks to be put up in order to make it function as a light body activating tool. So Ra actually built it in part to be using a crystal healer inside the pyramid. This is an important point. There would have to be trained priests and priestesses inside the pyramid who had certain special crystals, of which we don't know where they are, but they were certain special crystals. And you would, for example, in the king's chamber, you would lie down in the granite sarcophagus, which is a coffin, and you would experience this idea of burial, of death to the self. It's supposed to be dark in there. You do go through terrifying initiations. Napoleon tried to spend a night in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, and he was so terrified that he never wanted to go anywhere near the pyramid again. So when you go through the pyramid initiation, you risk dying, okay, because you will get all of your karma thrown into your face all at once. And I guess we have some props now. Well, you do something with it. You're the one that had the idea to use this thing.
I'm just offering him props from our house when he talks about certain things. It's a beautiful
It's a pyramid candle that we're never going to burn.
Because it's so beautiful. It was a gift that somebody gave to us. We love it.
At a conference, yeah.
But I thought you could
Okay.
talk about it.
Well, you want me to use the candle to delineate the pyramid here?
Yeah.
Okay. So the King's Chamber is kind of up in the top area along here. And there's, again, a granite sarcophagus in there, but there's also a Queen's Chamber, which is a little bit lower in the middle. And that Queen's Chamber has the niche, which is there's a wall in which there's an indentation. And then there's 7 layers of stone that come in, ratcheting inward like this. So there's the widest one is at the bottom, and then it just gets narrower at the top. So that actually also resembles a sarcophagus or a coffin, but in this case, you're standing up inside of it. Whereas in the King's Chamber, you lie down in the granite sarcophagus. Either way, the idea is that you are supposed to think of yourself as having been buried alive. You are supposed to think of yourself as dying. In other words, no matter what happens to you, whether you pass the initiation or fail the initiation, you're dying. You go into the pyramid to die. That's why there's these things associated with Egyptian mummification. But the idea is that you die to your ego, you die to your personality self, and what you're left with is the ascended light body, if you are successful in getting this to work. And you notice that it says it's realizing what your true self really is. It's getting to the core of your true self and getting to the core of who you really are and what does that really mean for you. So when you go through this burial and resurrection process, this apparently, according to the Edgar Cayce readings, is what actually happened with Jesus. And so this is another very controversial subject about the intersection of the law of one and Christianity. There is no doubt, in my mind, having read the law of one, studied it for so many years, there is no doubt that Ra was the harbinger of Christianity, that the pyramid was built to be the monument of the coming Logos, the embodiment of the galactic mind in a human form. So that's why they use the term harvest, because it comes out of the book of Matthew. And the book of Matthew talks about that the world is like a crop and that there are weeds planted in the crop and that the negative is allowed to grow these weeds until the time of harvest, at which point Jesus says the negative weeds are plucked out one by one, gathered into bundles to be burned in the barn. You saw that last week when we were doing the presentation from last week. Some pretty shocking stuff. And as I've told you guys, not really for public consumption at all. We don't want unscrupulous researchers just running with the ball of, oh yeah, the sun blows up every 25,000 years, and maybe even on the half cycle, and maybe even on the Mayan calendar 1/5 cycles, the sun does a big flash, and it's catastrophic for life on Earth. You can't engage this law of one material catastrophically, because what they tell you is that it doesn't matter. And I had somebody, I don't know if you saw this when you were there, but this woman came up to me in Sedona, because I did go through some of this stuff. I figure, people in Sedona can handle the idea of the sun blowing up. Mm-hmm. So I went there. But this lady comes up, I'll use you as a prop, come up here. And she goes, David, I know what you're really telling people. I know that you're not really telling us that we're all going to die in the tsunami and the volcanoes. And it's not that we're going to be rescued at all, right? That's the part you don't want to say. I said, no, look. Okay. There, see, I have to use my environment. So this lady, I said to her, look, the stuff that happened to Corey Good is what's going to happen to us. He said that the blue spheres are alive. So he would have a blue sphere show up in his room, zing around. Carla Ruckert had the blue spheres. They talk about it in the introduction to the Law of One. Jane Roberts had the blue sphere show up, which you read in the book, The Seth Material. And Seth, again, is the only other thing that I put even close to the Law of One and Edgar Casey in terms of its level of power as a channeled work. So my brother had the blue sphere. I prayed to have a blue sphere come and visit me, and then my brother got it instead. But the blue sphere visited him before I made the prayer, so it actually traveled backwards in time by 2 days. And when my brother saw it, it started as just a blue sphere, but then it widened out, as I've told you guys, into a vortex on the ceiling that was literally like a wormhole, like a black hole or something, the idea of a funnel, where it's brightest in the center, and then there's these spherical or circular layers where it gets dimmer and dimmer as it goes out. So these layers indicate the different levels of energy, the different levels of the energy body and of the soul, similar to the core-belled inner surfaces inside the Queen's chamber, which is, again, looks like a sarcophagus, but you're standing up in it. So either way, if you wanted to ascend really fast, you better be ready to not make it, because what happens when you go through the pyramid initiation is you have to face off against all of your distortions. You have to face off against everything bad that you've ever done to yourself and that you've done to others. It will typically come out in the form of some type of incredible horror movie that you're going through, like very torturous, terrifying series of experiences. Now, if you survive, if your heart doesn't explode, basically, if you don't have a heart attack, and you can love all of these parts of yourself, you can meet them, lovingly integrate them, then you get to ascend. It's very clear when you read the Edgar Casey readings that Jesus was the first and maybe the only person to actually use this technology successfully. There may have been others, okay, but they don't really tell you that in the Law of One in quite so many terms.
How do they do it without a pyramid?
Well,
that's the question.
Somebody asked the question, how do you do it? Well, that's the whole point. Is the earth is now the pyramid, okay? The pyramid creates energetic conditions to foster the activation of your light body, and those conditions are now worldwide, so you do not need to be inside the Great Pyramid. What we saw with Jeff, the guy that would normally be running our slides, he's going through some sort of massive karmic blast. We have a friend of ours who's literally on her deathbed. She's going through this massive initiation. I have been going through pain, literally like an ice pick stabbing into the side of my jaw. Thankfully, it doesn't kick in until later in the day. Right now, I'm actually pretty good. It's been unbelievable, and it's been going on for a month. So you at home watching this are probably going through the worst hell of your whole life right now. And if you're not, then just buckle your seatbelt, because it's probably going to happen soon enough. Now, how do you handle that? How do you respond to that? Do you get angry about it? Do you get pissed off? Well, I definitely did. I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect, and the degree of success that this negative greeting had on us doing this launch today made me very, very, very upset, because we tested everything. We're not fools. We're not incompetent, and it just didn't work. But only today. So you're having to deal with the facing of the self, the transformation of your distortions in Law of One terms to a higher level. You're getting through the blockages, and all those blockages are coming up for review. So whatever you don't want to look at is going to be thrown in your face. Whatever you don't want to face about yourself, that's what you're facing. You don't have a choice. You don't have an opportunity to ignore this. You don't have an opportunity to run away from it. It's going to be shoved right in your face. There's nothing you can do about it. All of my own attachments to perfection, I have extreme obsessive compulsive disorder. Elizabeth will tell you, when I take my vitamins, I line all of them up in a straight line, and they're all based on the height of how tall the vitamin bottle is. And then you were the one that told me I had to have the labels go forward.
Oh, no.
So now I turn all the labels forward as well.
I can't.
And then as soon as I take my vitamins, I throw them all back in the bag and throw it back in there. But I have to do that. I have funny little rituals that I like to do. And so, of course, this has just devastated my normal sense of order because I know that the quality of this video is not going to be good. There's nothing we can do about that. But we go on. So we're dying to ourselves, and we are becoming a new and risen being. So whatever flows out in this little talk, hopefully is still going to be good. And I think, you know, we have a great opportunity for learning here. You are going through this. You are going through transmutation. You are going through insane negativity. And so please don't lose heart about what this really means for you and why this is happening to you. This is not that the universe is trying to torture you. This is not that you have been singled out for abuse. If you are on your knees, if you are being wiped out, it is a purification. You are being transformed. You are being brought to another level. And Elizabeth, why don't you talk to him about that while I go take a leak, because I didn't even have time to pee. So.
About being transformed?
Yeah, being brought to your knees and transformed.
Oh, well, yes. It's also called the dark night of the soul, and it's also called Semana. Inside of ourselves, and it is a sacred appointment that is a part of the ascension path. And so today is Easter, talking about Yeshua. He really hit a dark night of his soul as well, being betrayed, not being received, and he was embodying the Logos, the Christ light, which is available to us all. The Christ light is that connecting link from our body to the Godhead, to source, to creator. So Yeshua embodied the Logos. Personality, meaning his human personality became transparent so that he could embody essentially the light of God and anchor that into the earth and show us the way. But that wasn't received, and also that will cause the death of many things. Experiencing death, whether in the dark night of the soul, the death of things that we felt were really important to us, the identity, the death of relationships, or hitting such hard times that we struggle so deeply, that can take us into those dark depths, into the underworld. And it's a sacred part of our dissolution, as well as the broadening of our spirit to encompass those areas with compassion and love. And that's really the test of the dark night, and the test of all of these things that happen to us. The test of any of the negative greetings is, can I fill that space with love and bring that light of creator, that light of love into that place and shine that place? So whenever that place is met, some of you may be in that place right now, that's ultimately the sacred task. It's to surrender. So to surrender to it. Don't judge yourself too much for it. Try not to allow it to take you too far off. But even if it's depression, or even if you don't feel like you're interested in living this life, there's this like sacred, that's that, you know, Yeshua on the cross, the sacrifice. It's sacrificing things inside of ourselves, sacrificing an identity, sacrificing, you know, being perfect, sacrificing so many things, and then really giving ourselves to the light of the one. So, back.
All right. Let's get the remote here. So yes, this concept of the dark night of the soul and the shadow is very, very important. I went through the whole Law of One guide on my website, which is really, it's a semi-complete collection of all the best quotes of the Law of One. There's certainly a lot that are missing. If I was going to go, I probably am going to go back and revise it and add a lot more stuff to it. But it's pretty darn good. And it was originally done by Dr. Bob Childers, and then I added and modified some of the things that he did. And he did also, in certain places, make the word a little bit more user-friendly. So these quotes that I'm pulling from are from the Law of One study. And in some cases, they have been, the wording, the syntax has been slightly simplified. Just so that we're clear, if you look these up and you're like, wait a minute, that's not exactly the way it's worded in the Law of One. We know, okay? And that's why. So one of the things that that I saw in the Law of One when I went back through the study guide to prepare for this week's module is that they talk in the Law of One about how many of us try to distract ourselves from our pain through the use of emotional crutches, through the use of drugs, through the use of being addicted to other people, codependency. We are very accustomed to denying our own pain. And so throwing yourself into the experience, throwing yourself into the shadow is the only way you will transmute the shadow. Most of us are very immature by Law of One terms in the spiritual sense. We are constantly looking for distractions. We're looking for exit ramps. We're looking for a way out. We don't want to turn in. We don't want to face it. Dying to yourself is basically that process of going into the shadow. When you go into the pyramid, it's the ultimate face down with your shadow. It's the most terrifying experience you could imagine because you're burning off lifetimes of karma in one shot. It may only appear to take a few days of time for you to be in there, but subjectively, just like a bad acid trip or something, you could experience what seems like years that you go through, but it's all this very intense karmic processing. So the dark night of the soul is induced by the pyramid. So this is what I'm saying, and I have to credit Greg Braden. He was the first one to say that the earth as a whole is now like a pyramid initiation chamber. He was saying that back in the mid-1990s. It's gotten way the hell more that way now than it was before. Regardless of which side you're on in the political spectrum, and by the way, if you get an idea, Elizabeth, you can just jump in.
Okay.
We'll just make this a joint lecture. The political game that's going on right now is, look at what just happened with Notre Dame. I mean, to me, with the briefings that we got on that, is that they deliberately burned their own church, the cabal did, because they had some very dark stuff in there. They had some sinister records of, child trafficking and who did what to whom and all this kind of stuff. So with that in mind, okay.
I'm just going to switch you because when you're talking, I'm going to try to see what happens if I can switch to you.
Okay.
And make you big and switch to, I'm just playing around here. I'm not
Desktop
sure.
one. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just seeing, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
So we only built this to do it one way, and now we don't know if that way works. And so
yeah, I'll just put it back there.
Let's bring these slides back up again.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're hearing about Notre Dame is that the cabal burned their own ship down because there was all these incriminating records. Another thing that has happened just since our last broadcast is Julian Assange being arrested. And who better to testify as to who really leaked the information about the WikiLeaks emails prior to the election? Had nothing to do with Russia. So, David, don't go into politics. Well, you guys love politics, or else you wouldn't have signed up for my class. So, look, Trump has made a lot of mistakes. There's some things he's done that are so incredibly annoying, where it's really tough to want to get behind him. But at the same time, knowing what I know about what's really going on, I'm not going to go totally negative. I'm very optimistic about what is happening with this administration. It's obvious this administration is directing Q. There's tons and tons of tie-ins with Q and the president. And they said after Assange was arrested, we have the source. So the Mueller report was the nothing burger. Of course, there's no actionable information. I spent 18 months ripping this thing apart, found nothing, nothing of actual substance to cause any greater actions to take place. Of course, the controlled media is only saying, oh, well, now we got to start impeachment proceedings. What? Because you didn't find anything? So a lot of people would probably be really happy to see impeachment take place, but look at the censorship. Look at the fact Jimmy Church just a few days ago, they demonetized his channel on YouTube. Why? Because there's so many copies of my interview with him that have been stolen and re-uploaded that YouTube came back to him and said, you have too many stolen videos on your channel.
Strange.
But he's the source of the videos,
Right.
but it's automated, so they don't know that. So I think what YouTube is doing now is they're deleting all the duplicated videos. They're looking for duplicated audio, they're looking for duplicated video, and they're trying to find the source, and they're deleting everything but the original. They didn't know, or they didn't know that Jimmy Church was the original. And then also we had this thing with YouTube where I'm supposed to have all of my access for live streaming reaffirmed as of 15 days ago, because I did it legally. We did the whole legal process. It's supposed to be a 10-day wait. And they said, oh, just wait a few more days after the 10 days. It's been 15 days. So now maybe at the end of the normal 3 months, I'll get my channel back. Maybe, we don't even know.
So the energy
They might just keep it off. So it's insane. I mean, like, everybody is getting hit with the maximum stuff. The YouTube creators out there, I mean, we are trying to watch YouTube on our TV here, Beth and I, at night. It's almost impossible to find anything interesting. Like, you basically can't find, everything is being demonetized, everything is being delisted, the censorship is massive. I've done lots of videos with Edge of Wonder. They were used to getting 100,000 minimum. All of their videos lately are like 30,000 hits or less. So that shows you the awesome effect of what's being done here. So why are they censoring us so much? Why are they not letting us speak? Because it's all falling apart. The collective mind is going through a dark night of the soul. The collective mind is going through, oh my God, is this administration worse than Hitler, as I've heard people say? Or on the other side of the coin, is this the alliance, and is this doing something really positive? Well, I can tell that we're getting ready to have a big breakthrough, because the cabal would not burn down Notre Dame if they weren't right on the edge.
What was in Notre Dame?
Notre Dame was a series of pedophile records of who did what to whom, and a whole bunch of other incriminating data that they felt the only way to properly get rid of it was to burn it, because if they tried to remove it, the alliance would catch them and they would have seized the stuff. So they literally felt they had no choice but to burn the cathedral down. It's very, very sad. It's an incredible loss. That's one of the most beautiful cathedrals on earth, and it's been there basically undisturbed of any way like this since the 12th century. And so now there's all this stuff online about the conspiracy theories of, oh, we saw this guy on the roof. Well, yeah, it was a false flag.
I would
So
like to
go ahead.
say something here, because I just want to point out that it's all holographic. So what we're seeing in our world, where the shadow is being revealed. So the veil that used to cover the shadow up has literally been ripped off of these dark energies. And the reason that that's happening is because, like David was saying and Greg Braden said, you know, we are literally in an ascension chamber right now just by being on Earth. And that's because the ascension energies are penetrating this Earth, you know, fourth dimensional photons, as David says. We're flying through the cosmic fluff. Everything is amping up. And so it's happening everywhere and with everybody. And so that dark night of the soul that we all meet, and I've had a number of very, very strong ones, which are really what has purified me in many ways and expanded my ability to hold space for things and have compassion for things, and also really aligned me with my divine mission, because I died to so many other things, and I have had a near-death experience, more than one. So this is happening everywhere and with everybody. So anything inside of us, anything inside of you that is of a lower vibration, or is shadow, or is unhealed, an unhealed trauma, or anything that you have done that's a karma that hasn't been really accepted in your heart of love, your heart of forgiveness for yourself, and transcended, and then really ascended into a higher vibration, which would be compassion, understanding, wisdom. This is the transmutation that is our sacred task, the transmutation of anything less than love. So everything is up right now. And so what you're seeing are the dark forces attempting to keep it, in the shadows, to keep it under wraps, to very quickly get rid of the history, the information, because you can't keep it a secret now. That darkness is up. And so we see this everywhere. And this is a planet of duality. So it's a classroom of duality, fourth density, which is really the next step of ascension, unless we go rainbow body right back to the source. Yeah, fourth density is the next step, is an area, an experience of more love and understanding and compassion, when it's fourth density positive. So this is the great work that is happening individually with each one of us, and on a planetary scale. And so we're just seeing it everywhere.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's keep the slides moving. There's a lot of cool stuff here, and this one in particular is one that Elizabeth focuses on a lot more than me, the idea of the magical personality. I'm trying to get my pointer out of the way there. So they call in the 4 archangels. They do a banishing ceremony to get rid of any lower energies that could be there. And they call in the archangels representing the 4 principles, the 4 directions, all this kind of stuff. For war-hardened cynics and haters and skeptics on the internet, they may think that this section is kind of ridiculous, but it's actually very powerful stuff. They do say that part of the magical personality can even include a specific costume that you wear that invokes the idea of the sacred, something that makes you feel that you are in a spiritual persona. So it could be jewelry, it could be a robe, it could be any type of accoutrements that you would use to really make yourself look spiritually activated. And so when I do a lot of these conferences, especially like Conscious Life Expo, you'll see people going around in really outrageous costumes. And they have the makeup on, and they have the jewelry, they have the earrings, they have the necklace, they have the headband, they have the
robes.
The robe. Okay. So what they say in Law of One is you don't actually need to wear something different in terms of physical clothing, but they do want you to at least envision putting on a robe of light, putting on a garment of light, that you are invoking your magical personality by appearing to put this garment of light on, this robe of light on. And then it's also very important, when you'll see in this quote, it's very, very important that you take the robe off at the end of the working, that you actually consciously feel like you are literally lifting it off and taking it off of your body. And you want to actually even do that so that even if you don't have clothing that you would do this with, that you're doing it, that you're actually doing the gesture, you're feeling that you're putting something on you, you have this experience, you do the gesture of starting at the top of your head, putting on the garment, putting on the robe, okay? And then at the end, you actually come up from your feet, you lift it up, you take it off, and that's how you do it, Okay, so a robe obviously a good way to go, but they are talking about the idea of using ceremony to invoke your higher self. That this is not just something that is hokey, like the haters would say. You can get a much higher level of access to your higher self by doing this practice. So, and notice the wording here. It says, when the magical personality is properly invoked, the self has invoked its higher self. So part of that proper invocation is to call in the protection. And in the Law of One, they have the exact wording of what they use. It's in book 1 at the beginning of what did they say to get that to happen. The main thing is that you are calling out, you're banishing all that is not of the light, all that is not of loving energy. And there is really no right set of words to use, but the idea is to bring in the protection, bring in the archangels, bring in the higher forces, and cast out negativity both in yourself and in the room. And you can light candles, you could use the singing bowls like Beth was doing before, whatever works. And there's other, you could get a lot more into this, but let's read the quote. So, when you've properly invoked your higher self, a bridge between space-time and time-space, or the spirit world, is made, and the 6th density magical personality, which is the higher self, it's the same thing, the magical personality is your higher self. Your higher self directly is into your physical form when you invoke the magical personality. You are the embodiment of your higher self. Your higher self is not flying around doing all different stuff. It is now localized with you, and it experiences direct incarnation in 3rd density, the direct experience of 3rd density catalyst for the duration of your ceremony. You didn't know about this. This is the first time you've seen this.
Well, because I teach this in
I know. And you didn't know that it was in the Law of One, but now you do.
No, yeah.
So then again, it is most central to deliberately take off the magical personality after the working in order that the higher self may resume its appropriate function as your higher self, operating in many realms, not just in the 3rd density. So do you want to have any reaction to that? Because that's something you'd focus on a lot more than I do. So
I do. I could share a very simple way that I teach my priestess path initiates on how to banish negative energies and call in the archangels. So I'll share with you the simplest way that I do that. First, I'll say that the archangelic invocation that I use, I received when I was 17 years old. And it's very simple and it's very powerful and it's very simple to commit to memory. So whenever I'm in the dream state, if I ever get in, like if there's a negative entity or something, all I have to do is think about the archangelic invocation and attempt to call in the archangels, and they immediately come and they resolve the situation. And this has been happening for years and years, since I was 17. So I'm going to share that with you today. And these are the some of the initiations that I share with my priestess path initiates in the courses that I teach in empowering women in the sacred arts. So the simplest way that I banish energies from the space and bless the space is this. So what I do, I wasn't prepared, or else I would have brought my magical instruments. But if you have some smudge, I use smudge, or I will use frankincense and myrrh, the resins, and I take a charcoal, you light the charcoal, and then when it's red hot, you put the resins on there, and so they create a really beautiful, purifying smoke, and that's the use of frankincense and myrrh in the
as long as you don't have smoke alarms.
Yeah, your smoke alarms will go off if you do what I do, which is like fill your entire room or house with these smokes. So you might want to turn your smoke alarms off. So I take my smudge mixture, and then I go around. Either if I'm just doing it in my room, if I'm doing a ceremony in my room, I go around the room and I say in a voice of power, this space is of the light. This space is of the Christ. This space is of the light. This space is of the Christ. only the light may be here, all else must go. And if you have a feather, you can open your windows, if you have windows, and say, there's lots of room out there for you, you know, go along your way. That was one of my Hopi Chinichi friends taught me how to do, is open the window and tell them that there's lots of room out there for them. So when I talk about the Christ, for me, because I had a personal experience with the Christ light in my near-death experience, I see that as it's the light, again, that connects us to Source, God. And so you can amend that in any way that works for you. So I go around the room or the house, I say, this space is of the light, the space is of the Christ, this space is of the light, this space is of the Christ, only the light may be here, all else must go. And I say it at least 3 times, and I go all around my space. And so that is the simplest banishing. Because you are a co-creational being, and because your word has power, and because of the law of invocation, things respond to that. You can command your space. So after I do that, then the space is clean. Then I do the archangelic invocation. So after I've cleaned the space, and it goes like this. I invoke my higher self. I invoke the Christ light. I invoke Source, Creator. And I invoke the archangels of the 4 directions, Ariel, Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel. And I ask you to be with me here now and lend your power and protection to this work, or this space, or this person, okay? So it's as simple as that. And I will give you guys, I have a beautiful PDF and PNG that I created for Archangelic Invocation, and I'll make sure that you guys get it. So one more time, the Archangelic Invocation. I invoke my higher self. I invoke the Christ light. I invoke Source divine. And I invoke the archangels of the 4 directions, Ariel, Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel. And I ask that you be with me here now and lend your power and protection to this work. And then you see around you these big, huge beings of light, these angelic beings of light creating protection around you. So once you've invoked them, that is when we do whatever, like why did you invoke them? Maybe to ask for assistance for yourself, maybe to ask for assistance for another, maybe to pray. And when you're done, I say, thank you for being here. Thank you for assisting, and you may be on your way, or you may stay. Because of course, you know, who wouldn't want the archangels to stay, but we formally release them. And again, Uriel, Ariel, Uriel. So when I was 17, I pronounced it Ariel, but if you really get into it, it's Uriel. So just to give the right pronunciation of that one.
All right. So I actually think I figured out why we didn't work.
Oh yeah?
And it's because of this. Oops. It's this. I think it's this sound bar is the guilty culprit here.
Is that? Oh.
Because I plugged it in to the USB port, but I didn't turn it on, and so it wasn't actually turned on. And I think it disrupted the Avio system, and probably somehow cascading failure of the other system as well. So we're not going to fuss around with this right now, but that is a very positive thing. We're just going to leave this working the way it is, and I'll redo this stuff. But now I have a lot more confidence that we can solve the problem, because it very likely is that soundbar. It is new, and I hadn't ever tested the system with the soundbar plugged in before. So
we're not sure if that's it.
We don't know if that's what it is, so we're not going to stop.
Yeah.
We've already invoked the magical personality, although with a lot of frustration at the beginning. So we're in the zone here. We're going to keep going. So yeah, I actually threw that in because I knew that Elizabeth has gotten a lot more into that type of the work than I do. I have a process that I would always go through with the readings when I was doing a reading. I had a particular prayer that I would say, which basically would go like this. And so this is my version. There's no one right way to do this. And I would always make it a little bit different in terms of the wording, but I'll give you what I said. So I would say, Father, Mother, God, Holy Spirit, Shekinah glory, and the Son, Jesus the Christ. As we approach thy throne of grace, beauty, and might, we throw about ourselves the power and the protection found in the name of the one infinite Creator and all its emissaries. We ask that you surround this room, these workings, these people, with the light of everlasting love, such that only the highest and purest forms of light and love imaginable might then come through. We thank you for this opportunity to be of service and to create a portal through which you may speak directly with us. And now, after a brief period of silence, we shall begin the reading. So that was essentially how I would start, something like that. So there's no one right answer, okay? The main thing is that you're calling in the highest form of spiritual light and love that you can, that works for you, and that you are banishing any lower thought forms, including those within yourself. So you don't want to be sad, you don't want to be angry, you don't want to be hungry, you don't want to be thirsty, you don't want to be overtired, and you want to be in a very positive, uplifting state, but calling upon power as well. And the Law of One has multiple quotes where they talk about the importance of calling upon power. You have to actually call upon it in order to use it and access it. You can't just get the spiritual power. You have to invoke the power.
Free will.
Through free will, yes, they do say that too. So here's another quote that really relates nicely with everything we're talking about. The Law of One says that all things are one creator. There is nothing else. Thus, seeking the Creator is done not just in meditation and in the work of the adept, which is the highly advanced spiritual seeker, but in the experience of every moment. So this is, again, very, very important, because what is it telling you? It's saying, and this is why I don't get too hung up on the idea of the mass meditations, right? First of all, when you do a mass meditation, if somebody like me was going to do a mass meditation, there's no question that the cabal would do false flag killings. We've seen this a couple different times where people have done mass meditations and then the cabal will create a false flag during that event. So I'm happy that some people do it, but I don't usually call attention to them because it's very easy to backfire with the strength of the adversary that we have. And then we're not just doing a mass meditation, it's the experience of every moment. The idea being, the term that's used for this is mindfulness. The idea that you want to always be in a state of meditation. You want to always be in a state of seeking the Creator. And that's why, as I told you in previous episodes here, the two exponential increases that you get, the two practices that create exponential increase in your spiritual growth, and there's only two. Number one, seek the love in this moment. Each additional seeking of love in the moment creates an exponential increase in the power you can draw upon. Number two, reflect on the past for how it informs the present. Each additional reflecting upon an event from your past that informs the present creates an exponential increase. So if you think, oh, I don't want to deal with my past, I got all these broken memories and all this sad stuff happened to me, I blocked it out, I haven't gone there in a long time, I don't want to look at that stuff. Every time you bring up something new, you're exponentially increasing the power you can call upon for spiritual energy, which is a pretty freaking big deal. And as I said, the real key, the secret to the exercise is that you're reflecting upon the past, and each experience is then infused with seeking the love in this moment. So you actually do both of them at the same time. You balance the unpleasant experiences of your past, the bad memories, with the fact that you are now an adult, that you can take care of yourself, nobody's going to dominate you, nobody's going to ruin your life. You have the control to a large degree, if not a complete degree, of how you get to live, what you get to do, how you're going to live. So it's the experience of each moment. So this is a very essential aspect of any of the higher dimensional ascensions. So if you are fine with a field goal, go ahead and, just crash through life and basically be a nice person. But if you really want to get to 5D, 6D, 7D, you have to start to live a meditative life, you have to try to not drop your spiritual persona and only bring it up when it's convenient. It's a very important point. All right, let's have another one here. Keeping going here. And these are quotes I've never used before. You guys are, this is the first time that anybody is getting these quotes given by me in slides. So I wanted to give you some very unique new stuff. In each infinitesimal part of yourself resides the one in all of its power. And that is really talking again about the holographic universe. The idea, as we've been saying so brilliantly throughout this show, throughout this 5-week class, the whole universe starts from a photon. That's what it says in the law of one, that the original creation is a photon and that everything is holographic of the photon. Now we really know what they're talking about. I talked to you about how thoughts are like kaleidoscopic sacred geometry in the brain. The dog was poking her head through the curtains there and gave me a really silly look. So she knows that I'm in my magical. Really? You're gonna come in here?
Hi?
Oh my God!
Do you want to say hi?
All right. Well,
Come here. Say hi to everybody.
we have to lift the dog.
Can you see? Oh, what's your Josie? We want to be a part of it too.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
No, don't. Get on out of here, girlie. I don't even know if you guys could see the girlie or not, but she was here.
Probably, yeah.
So you got to kind of just go improvisationally with what happens, right? So in each infinitesimal part of yourself resides the one in all its power. Every electron, every nucleus of the atom is the photon. It's the same sacred geometry. It's the same stuff. So even within your atoms, you have the hologram of the one infinite creator. It's all interrelated. So you can really benefit from meditating on the sacred geometry and seeing how that aspect fits in. And we've already talked about that in previous episodes, so we're not going to go too much farther. Now, here's another really cool thing. The unity of the creator exists not only in a self-aware being, but within the smallest portion of any material created by love. So that, again, is the same sort of holographic principle that I was giving you before about how this energy is everywhere. And it's interesting, too, to note, just on the negative greeting front, that I moved the blankets that were on the couch, and I've now got like these massive funky splinters inside my hand causing consistent pain signal. Just because of the scope of what we're getting in order to try to destroy this working. But we're not going to stop. So it's very, very important that you not live alone. So this kind of flies in the face of the Hindu / partially Tibetan view of the ascetic, the forest monk who lives alone, lives in the mountains, doesn't talk to anybody, never comes down the mountain. That is not the law of one perspective. And if you are living an isolated life, you're not going to get what you need to get. It's very important that you deal with others. The quickest way to learn is to deal with other selves. It says it right here. This is a much greater catalyst than dealing with the self. Dealing with the self without other selves is akin to living without mirrors. Then the self cannot see the fruits of its beingness. This is a very important point. And Elizabeth, why don't you give him something on your own challenge with dealing with others while I go yank these very painful splinters out of my hand.
People also might want a tea break themselves.
Oh, it's very early though. We're not there.
He says it's too early for you to have a pee break. Oh, my challenge with dealing with others. Well, I was always a really shy child because I could see people's auras and I could hear their thoughts, and the thoughts and the aura wasn't really matching up with what was coming out of people's mouths. And at age 5, I made a vow that I wasn't going to talk to people anymore, and I was only going to talk to animals because animals didn't lie, and they were much easier to connect with, and they were very loving, whereas the human beings in my life had lots and lots of different things going on, lots of ulterior motives and issues. And so I didn't want to talk to people. So my initial architecture is really that of a recluse and that of a hermit or a monk. And so when I got out of my family, and then I actually quit college after a couple of years because I just wanted to study mysticism, and they didn't have mystic on the college menu. So I'm like, I'll go find my own way. I went off into the mountains, and I stayed there for about 10 years. I lived very isolated. I only had like one person around me for that amount of time. And I was doing a lot of healing at that time. So my personal challenge with people, I didn't even intend to talk to people until I was about 21 years old, when I realized, okay, I'm an adult now. I have to negotiate my own way through this world. I can't just be quiet and not say anything, which you can pretty easily do in school, because you don't have to open up a checking account. You don't have to go, do a bunch of things for yourselves. So my personal issue is also, it's very difficult to be seen, because when you're seen by people, some people will like you, some people will love you, some people will hate you, some people will judge you, some people will attack you. And as a sensitive soul and an empath, it was really difficult for me to allow myself to be seen and feel the hurt and the hatred or the anger comes from some people. So I have had two beings inside of me, a monk, and then what David says is Momoa, or this great warrior spirit, like Jason Momoa. So David tells me, he's like, Momoa has to win. And what that means is that that part of me that wants to just go off and isolate and be insulated and not have to interface with people because it's painful sometimes, the sacred warrior has to win. That energy that has a stand and has something to say and is strong enough to deal with whatever comes that way. And so that's my personal challenge with being seen by many people, the monk versus Momoa. The fact that I'm talking to you right now, the hippie, he calls it's the hippie in Momoa. The fact that I'm talking to you right now, I'm in my Momoa, so he's one of my power animals, Jason Momoa. Mm-hmm.
If you could call him an animal.
Yeah. One of my spirit guides.
All right, well, look at it this way. This little disaster that we had is giving you guys even more stuff, and it's also teased Elizabeth out of the shadows and brought her into the class, which was not at all something we planned. So, we're making lemons into lemonade here.
Yeah.
And I now have my phone so I can see what time it is. And I did get the splinters out, so we got that done. All right, so this is a part of what goes into fifth density, and I'm going to have more slides on the densities and breaking them down specifically when we do this formally with the right cameras and without stuff plugged into the USB port that ruins our video. So anyway, check this out. This is pretty cool. At what point in the densities is it necessary for an entity to be conscious of the law of one in order to progress? And it says the fifth density harvest, which again means ascension, is of those who accept the honor and duty of the law of one. Consciously aware of the law of one is a key element in going from 4D to 5D. So the law of one means that you understand that we are all one being, that we are all interconnected at a higher level. So, well, David, you've been saying that the whole time. Well, yeah, because I don't just teach the field goal. I want you to get the full ascension process. So consciously aware of the law of one is part of the 5D harvest But let's not forget, what is 5D? That is the throat chakra. So there are also very important layers of this having to do with wisdom, honor, and communication. They talk extensively in the Law of One about their own transition from fourth density to fifth density, that they had excessive compassion that needed to be balanced with wisdom. So this is a very, very important point. When you are at the fourth density ascension level, and that's all that you're going to do, you will tend to have a personality and a perspective that is very open-hearted, but also very naive. And we see that a lot in the New Age community. We see a lot of people who, you know, and I don't mean to offend anyone here, but a lot of people who just base everything they do on channeling, and not channeling that's hardcore like the Law of One, but channeling that's very kind of subjective and open to interpretation and not at all like a solid fixed fact that this is true. And then we also invariably see, when I do events and people come up to me to talk, people who have worked out their own worldview, and they've got this channeled thing that they've done, and it's all them, and they end up putting themselves kind of at the center of the whole ascension process. And we get this all the time. So very important to understand the Law of One, to make it into 5D, meaning you understand, as I've said to you before, I am above no one and I am below no one. So it's good to focus on the I am below no one part, but it's also important to focus on the I am above no one part. Because then you're seeing there's no single point failure in the ascension process. The universe would never design this thing where one person is the key to the whole thing changing. I mean, granted, you have a teacher like Jesus who clearly had a very important role, but even then you have different religions that get this message across in different ways. It wasn't just one person. There's other ways that it can happen. What do we got here?
It's Jason Momoa.
Oh, it's Momoa. Okay, fair enough. He's your spirit guide.
My power.
Your magical personality.
Right.
And, you know, I had this dream about the hippie versus Jason Momoa, and told her about it. It was obviously something she was supposed to get, and the idea that this warrior side of her had to win. So that's a very important point. So anyway, with the fourth density, you basically just open your heart, and it's about being forgiving, being loving, you know, helping other people out. With the 5D, what does this do? You got to look, first of all, at the actual throat chakra. What does it do? It is what you speak through, and it is also the portal through which you ingest food. Whereas 6D up here is above where you chew and swallow. So the smile has to do with how you present yourself to the world. It has to do with your external presentation. The throat has to do with communication. We're going to have some quotes in here on communication, the importance of communication, the skill of communicating is very critical. And then we also have the principle of honor. Honor is a fifth density thing. So and there's other quotes in the Law of One that I didn't pull in here. They were not in the study guide. And if I have more time, maybe I will before the next broadcast, I'll pull in a couple honor quotes. It's so important because to consciously be aware of the Law of One is to understand and apply the principle of what they call honor/duty. You have an honor, you are honored to serve. You have a responsibility. You have a duty to serve. Once you become consciously aware of the Law of One, you recognize that there's only one of us here, and you recognize that to your own ability, you are attempting to embody that while also being in the realm of third density, which is inherently confused. So you are trying your best to be a messenger of the one creator for others, to inspire them to seek this within themselves. That is your honor, and it is also your duty. So density, you can have a lot of hippie type people in fourth density. Fourth density is the hippie mentality. You can be chilling out, having fun, just doing all kinds of hedonistic activity, lots of enjoyment, lots of recreation, lots of time off, sitting around on couches, blissing out with colors on the wall, with beautiful music, with movement, dance. You have your friends, but you're just kind of enjoying your life. You're chilling out. You're having a good time. Sort of what happens with most people typically when they're going through high school, college, late adolescence, that kind of thing. And you go through your sort of partying years. At some point, you got to get serious. You got to get into the world. You got to take action. You got to start to be an adult. You can't be high all the time. You can't do the things you want to do. You can't just goof around. You got to have responsibility. That's your honor and it's your duty. So there's kind of a parallel in the law of one sense that fourth density ascension is still spiritual childhood. You can still be ridiculously naive. The fifth density is also the density of wisdom. So this is the other really big key about the throat chakra. Not only is it honor and duty, not only is it communication, we'll get into that in a second, it's wisdom. So in the law of one terms, they say fourth density represents love, which is one of the primordial forces of the universe. Fifth density represents light. Light is wisdom. They mean the same thing. So when you go into 5D, in order to break into 5D, first of all, you have to be studying wisdom teachings. You have to be engaged in a conscious quest to seek out wisdom. You want to build knowledge. You're not just interested in things that make you feel good, in, burning the incense and wearing the perfumes or the essential oils, wearing the clothes, wearing all the fun robes and colorful stuff, and going and blissing out and having fun. You're studying, you're building your knowledge. That's a very important part of 5D. It is the wisdom density. So all of this stuff about building your wisdom, all of this stuff about then communicating, because the throat chakra is communication. So you're consciously realizing law of one. You begin communicating it to others. You are not hiding out. You are engaged in social activity. You are engaged in spreading the message. And all of this has to do with becoming consciously aware of the law of one. And then notice it says the fifth density harvest, when you are actually ready to graduate out of fifth density, okay, is those who accept the honor and duty of the law of one. So that's really, so the fifth density harvest, so slightly mistaken in how I worded this. You have to be seeking wisdom. You have to be communicating it to others. You have to be on a path of greater seeking to make it into 5D. You have to start to balance your compassion with wisdom. And that's a huge discussion too. The typical fourth density, so I'll just be honest, one of the best ways to have to be thrown in and invoke fifth density is to become somewhat famous or relatively famous, if not just flat out famous as a teacher. So I had to get thrown in on this, and Elizabeth has gotten thrown in much faster. You only had like a couple years, really only a year, because we only announced you last April. Right. So really only a year to deal with this. She's done amazingly well. If you're at a fourth density level, think about like Jesus. Think about not only, because there's a really interesting part of the law of one where they say that Jesus removed the opportunity to be further of service by allowing himself to be crucified. That's another one of those things that's probably better that this be hidden away in a private class and not a YouTube video. That Jesus, by martyring himself, removed the opportunity to do more for the planet. And that he could have done a lot more the way he was. But he chose this mission, and this mission was very important in terms of embodying the hero's journey. So we have what I call the subconscious Judeo-Christian bias. It's a very important point. The subconscious Judeo-Christian bias is this trend towards self-martyrdom. We want to be like Jesus. We even if we're not really Christian, right? We're all in the Western, most of the audience is in the Western world. And so we have this pedigree in our background. This is also why so many people think that they're invoking the highest law and the highest truth when they blast me on the internet for having an ego and they say, David must be more humble, 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 be more humble. And it's like an echo chamber of that. That's to be totally humble is not the highest teaching. The highest teachings involve becoming the creator, which is an act of humility, but it's also an act of transparency where you embody are. And most people can't handle that. We're going to have those quotes. Oh, now it's saying the internet connection is unstable. Oh, it only happened for a split second. Okay.
That's fine. Well, there is this confusion about people like saying they're jumping from 3D to 4D or to 5D. They're going straight from 3D
Yeah,
to
so
5D.
we mentioned that briefly. Some people do basically want to say that like we're ascending into fifth density because we're already a fourth density society. Not true, not in law of one terms. The Earth is activating a fourth density sphere. It will be that way for a prolonged period of time. The average fourth density entity has a 90,000 year lifespan. That's in the law of one, 90,000 of our years of time for one lifetime in fourth density. And the total fourth density cycle is 30 million years long. So when Corey Goode got this idea that the Anshar traveled 12 million years back in time to be able to prepare us for this ascension so that things wouldn't get thrown off, that's less than half of their total cycle of how much time they have to spend in 4D before they get to ascend. And even the idea of a lifespan of 2,000 to 3,000 years is short compared to what the law of one says a fourth density entity's lifespan is. So you get a lot of time to be in 4D. And when you're in 4D, you do have some really amazing abilities, but you also have limitations. And the limitations are that you have a lot of compassion, but you don't necessarily have wisdom. You can be deceived, you can be duped, you can be fooled. We see this all the time in the metaphysical community. When I started out, I had a lot of fourth density. And so, and you know, I know that you watching this are probably somebody who would want to do this. So I apologize, but I'm giving you now the inside track because you may actually become a famous spiritual teacher in your own right. It's entirely possible because you're getting the teacher's teacher information, okay? So let's just say you become a famous, maybe you already are as a spiritual teacher. You go to these events, people are standing in line, and they all have a sales pitch, and they all want you to agree to it right on the spot. Before I got married to Elizabeth, I can't tell you how many times I had the weird sex pitch. And women would come up to me, they would tremble, they would do orgasmic breaths in my ear, they would tell me something really outrageous and very bold, including sometimes direct sexual solicitations. I'm not enjoying this. I'm not happy about this. I don't like somebody who I've never met before coming up and trying to immediately create deep sexual intimacy in a conversation. The other thing that would always happen is people have a product or a service that they're selling and they have the business card, the brochure, the product sample, the hard sell. So you get the hard sell. And then the other thing that would always happen is people would say, just 5 minutes. I need just 5 minutes alone with you, David, but it can't be here. We got to go somewhere else. Now, in the beginning, with my extraordinary naivete, I actually did this. And I did this a few different times, several times.
Not the sexual.
What did I, not the sexual part, but the just 5 minutes alone. No sex happened in these cases. You know, I've only ever gotten together with people where it evolved organically over time, never a short-term fast hookup like that. So anyway, in these cases, they say 5 minutes alone, just 5 minutes alone. Never once did any person honor that verbal contract. Every single one of them would talk as long as they possibly could, forcing me to be basically rude and cut them off and say, we have to stop, I have to go back, I can't leave the audience, I've got other things to do. So, and then you find out that people try to get into your life, they try to take advantage of you, they want what you have. It is astonishing the amount of betrayals that Elizabeth and I have both seen just in the course of, since she got involved with me, and then I've had it for 20 years before that. it is astonishing how many people will fail to uphold what they promised you they would. So as a result, this gets into some of these quotes in the Law of One about the adept, and that you end up walling yourself off from other people more and more because people just can't handle it. They can't handle access to you when you become somebody who is famous, somebody who embodies an archetype of spiritual power. So the process of becoming a public figure requires you to transcend the ignorance of fourth density, the unbounded compassion, where you'll just kind of say yes to everything. You'll just kind of be blowing through the wind and kind of take whatever is offered. You have to learn discernment. You have to learn how to make up your mind, and it's very important. This is so critical. The real activated fourth density person never wants to let other people down. You don't want anybody to be upset. You don't want to ever hurt somebody's feelings. You don't want to ever make somebody sad, which means whatever they ask you to do, you want to do it. You want to say yes. You want to help that person. You are incredibly vulnerable to psychopaths and to manipulators and narcissists and liars who are in that fourth density consciousness. So you have to learn at some point how to say no to people, how to set boundaries with people, how to upset. You know there's only one way you're going to get through this, which is to upset that person. You can't do it in a way where they're going to be happy. And so the universe will set you up where you have to upset people. You can't leave it with them feeling good. You do your best, but you have to set the boundaries. So that fifth density thing is where you start to develop wisdom, and the wisdom of saying no, and the wisdom of saying you can't say yes to everything. You have to choose your path. So many people in fourth density get so scattered. They say, well, I want to do this, but I want to do that. And I want to get a Qigong certification. I want to teach yoga. I want to learn about crystals. I'm going to take this class. I'm going to take that class. I get this certification. I did this weekend workshop. I got this. I got that. Well, I also do tarot cards, but I also do Reiki hands-on healing. I mean, it's ridiculous. So at some point, you have to really decide what is your thing. Get into your thing, do your thing, not scatter yourself. That's another big part of fifth density wisdom application. So to get to sixth density, to go through the fifth density harvest, you're now consciously committed to the Law of One. You see everyone as equal. You see yourself as a messenger of the one infinite creator, and you are consecrating your life to service to others, where your whole life, your whole focus is service to others. That is what is necessary to make it to 6D, which is the fifth density harvest. Now they say that elsewhere, not in this particular quote, but elsewhere they say that. So did you want to add something to that, or?
I just wondered, so we're definitely going into 4D for the,
well, get on camera.
The next ascension step is definitely 4D.
Absolutely. Anybody that says otherwise is just doing channeling.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. All right, yeah, it's good. Maybe maybe just some ways of how to have sacred boundaries, how to say them, because I think that that's where people have a really hard time. A lot of people in wanting to do good. I've noticed this a lot. Okay, well, you can take a break now. This will be your break. I'm your break. So those of you
we're
that
gonna have a break.
Want a break?
We're at we're gonna do that.
I work with this a lot. Boundaries are what I call them, and that we have to have them. Any young woman has to learn how to have sacred boundaries, or else anybody that wants her would have her. So we have to have them because there are forces that would prey upon us. And so there's ways to do it that are less detrimental than others. Sometimes when we're first starting out, having boundaries, we can be harsh because we don't know how to say it any other way. And so give yourself a little bit of room to just begin attempting to state healthy and honorable boundaries, and you're not going to be perfect at the very beginning. It's an act of self-love to have those boundaries, and it's an act of love for the other person, because if there's any kind of predatory energy, whether it's conscious or unconscious, that's actually a distortion that it's fine to have an honorable buffer from that, and it's part of the teaching and learning of that person. So one of the ways to have healthy boundaries is, one is to be able to say no and not to feel bad about saying no. So you get lots and lots of things that people ask you to do. Will you do this? Will you do that? Will you do that? And you can just simply say, I'm not available for that right now. You can say, sorry, I'm not available for that right now. And just leave it at that. Nobody can force you to do something that you don't want to do. A lot of people who are kind and compassionate, have compassionate hearts and are do-gooders, have a problem with this. So many women with it, if you're that nurturing type of, or if you're an empath and it's hard to feel other people being disappointed or upset with you, but that's a part of your sacred acceptance. We cannot control how other people are going to take our communication of our sacred boundaries. The important thing is that we honor ourself and our energy and the maintenance of our light and our power to say them.
Well,
So
let me add this too real quick, which is this just kind of points out some of the really interesting gender discrepancies in the spiritual path, because as a man, the likelihood of me being raped by somebody was practically zero. Nobody, I was not an attractive looking guy as I was younger, very, very dark eyes, very pale skin, lots of acne. I had no risk of somebody trying to seek me out for sexuality. So I was able to go through many, many years.
Whereas for women,
not having
this tends to be very, very much a part of,
right.
Very much a part of our experience. For most women, there is definitely a time or many times that men or even women will attempt to push their will upon you and secure you in some way, let's say. And so you have to have good boundaries, or else you will have lots of problems and lots of suffering as a young woman, as a woman, growing up until, I guess, the time when people stop doing that to you. And so part of it is just simply saying, no, thank you. You're wonderful. No, thank you. And I was just sharing with David not too long ago, a couple of days ago, about how difficult it was for me to have boundaries as a young woman. And I remember my prom date for high school was probably the most unpopular guy in the school, but I had just transferred to the school because if you know my story, people know that I had a severe eating disorder, and I was hospitalized for that eating disorder, which actually the healing of that is what got me on my spiritual path. But I also was taken out of my school, my state, and I was put into another school. So I didn't really know anybody. So I was new. And prom came around, and the most unpopular guy asks me, and I felt that I wasn't worthy, really, of saying no to him. And so I had this really bad prom experience. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be with this guy, but I felt bad for him. I felt sorry for him. And so I agreed, whereas I really just sort of said no and allowed myself to be alone or just go by myself. It's no problem. But I didn't want to make people uncomfortable. And that's been one of the biggest lessons of my life, is knowing and allowing other people to be uncomfortable and being true to myself in a loving way. So I have learned how to just simply say no, or not even say anything, and be true to myself, because I don't want to do that, actually. I really don't. And so I'm not going to. But the way you say it's really important, you can say, no, thank you. That's all you have to say. You don't need an explanation. And you have to be willing to allow the person to feel uncomfortable. It's not your responsibility to make everybody feel a certain way. That's actually an attempt to control other people and to control situations to try to make oneself feel safe. And so that's in the service to self arena. So part of our spiritual maturity is in the authenticity of caring for our truth and our being, and allowing, it's like a sacrifice. It's allowing other people to be mad at us, maybe, to feel uncomfortable. To meet that person, that's a really, really big step in this ascension process.
Well, and throw in quickly what it's like when you got 200 people in line and everybody tries to do that to you all at once.
Well, when you have 200 people in line and everybody is attempting to secure time with you, to secure a promise from you, to basically involve themselves in your life, and you just don't have that. You just don't have the capacity or the time to involve that many people in your life. You know, we're very, very clear on what our missions are, and then we were blessed to find each other, and we have a mission together. We have a co-empowering and harmonious mission together. So we're very much like in our own thing. And so we don't have the space or the time, and nobody really has the space or the time for hundreds of other people in there. And so it is part of a lot of what we do. We just have to say, you know, but no, not available. Thank you, you know, for that.
And you grow a lot faster when you get 100 of these, 200 of these all at once.
Well, he's talking about level of, I don't know, it's a certain level of fame, if you will. You do have to have this gracious no. It's a gracious no. So for all of you that are working with your boundaries and working with communication, and it's just a gracious no. It's okay to have it. You are worth it. And you just have to accept and allow other people to do whatever they do about it. But it's just that gracious no that maintains the sanctity of it's your inner sanctum, your peace, your harmony, your focus, your mission.
Well, and I've also referred to this as the Santa Claus paradox, which is Santa Claus is a myth of somebody who goes down every chimney and fills the stockings. And even as a little kid, you know, being such a science geek, I said, well, you know, there's over 200 million Americans alone, not to mention everybody else in the world. And it's impossible for one being to land on all of the family houses' chimneys and go down. You know, you'd need like thousands and thousands of Santas in order to pull this off. So I debunked Santa Claus at a very young age. And I could also tell that Santa was my mother's handwriting. And then I was so convinced that I actually went downstairs in the basement and looked at the gifts before I got them to prove that they were not from Santa, that my mother had already bought them. And I showed my brother too, and he got really sad. Santa is a myth, Michael. Look at this. You know, so very important that you can't do the Santa Claus paradox. So if you become a leader, as lots of people, happy to stand. I'm happy to, you know, have the 30-second to 60-second conversation, but you can't do more. And everybody wants more, and they're really upset that they don't get more. But it's like, we're not Santa Claus. We can't do it. I'm really, really sorry.
Just one last thing on that. We understand that this is for both men and women. There's predatory energy out there, and women are not the only ones that are the really the victims or the targets of predatory energy. So what we're talking about right now is the energy of predation, the energy of, you know, people who, and it's levels. There's a spectrum, right? You know, we understand there's a spectrum of high predation, and then there's this, like, people don't really understand that they're, you know, maybe taking too much from you or something. And I know that some of you had some really bad experiences with that, and very, very difficult to transmute those experiences into your power or your love. I just want to say that the worst experiences, what we can do with those is you take that and you find a way to make that your power, your teaching, and your message. Because if you have been hurt or harmed by something, by others or by yourself, the way that I have transmuted that in my own life is I have said, how can I find the healing for it by connecting to source? It's really connected me to my path, my spiritual path, because I had to in order to transmute the pains and the darkness. And then how can I take that, the knowledge that I have gained, the practices that I have gained, and then share that with other people. So that's, in a nutshell, what one can do to transmute something that's such a difficult pain. And then you can go and you can share your message with other people, other women, other children, other men. And so what we learn, it's a harsh awakening to know that there is this negative energy out there. There are those people that would do the bad things. And that's why I always talk about the sacred warrior. That's why it's so important to bring the awareness, the knowledge, and the architecture of the sacred warrior, to anchor that into ourselves and to keep that wisdom alive. And so the women in my priestess path Valkyrie course understand what I'm talking about. There's some that are also here right now on David's Mysteries, in David's Mystery School. I talk a lot about the sacred warrior. I share the sacred warrior codes, and I speak into bringing the architecture of that in so that we understand and we can sense when there's that energy. And then sometimes we're too young, too innocent to understand that, and we get burned. And then that's when I say, make that your medicine, become a medicine carrier from that experience, get your healing, get your transformation, find your power again, reclaim your soul, and then become a sharer of that medicine, become a medicine man or a medicine woman from that initiation. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is making my job almost too easy, right? Don't have to talk all the time. We're going to have another quote here, and we're heading up on the break pretty soon, which is at the 2.5-hour point. That's about as long as I ever usually push people. So now this is some more almost like trivia that I wanted to bring in regarding, they do say in the fourth that there's genders that go on up through the higher density bodies. You do still have a male or a female. And the fourth density body is like the human body, but it's got different types of materials. So it took a long time for me to understand that these 4D and 5D beings do have bodies in a sense, and those bodies can be left behind as a corpse. And so if you go back to the testimony of Emery Smith, who I absolutely believe is telling the truth. I mean, I started to hear from him back in 2009, and it took many, many years for him to actually come forward with these amazing things that he knew. And I didn't think there was any chance of it happening, but he would talk about how some of the beings that he had to autopsy that were extraterrestrials, of which he claims that he had some 1,200 different full bodies that were but had different characteristics. They looked sort of like different parts of the world that we see today in the animals or the marine life or birds or whatever, even plant material in some cases, accelerated forward to a human-looking form with a face, the head, 2 arms, 2 legs, hands, feet, all this kind of stuff. So there's pretty commonality things that take place, but there's also some really strong discrepancies. Some of what he saw were basically protoplasm, where they were kind of in the outline of a human form, but they weren't consolidated into anything, but they still had some kind of mass. That might be more like a 5th density being in that case that has not consolidated in one form. So let's read this quote, you'll see what I'm talking about. In 5th density, the manifestation of the physical complex, which is the body, is more and more under the control of the conscious mind. Therefore, the fifth density entity may dissolve one manifestation and create another. So right there, what you're seeing is that if a being like this is changing itself from one form to another, and it was killed in the process, then you could have the protoplasm form of it where it hasn't yet consolidated into another form. Also, Ra said in the Law of One that they had downshifted to 5D in order to more directly work with us. So it does appear that this blue avian form that Corey Good saw is the form. They even talk about that they identified with the hawk in the Law of One. And they talk about the connection to Horus, which of course is a hawk-headed, blue, feathered, humanoid being. But even the blue avian form is not something they have to be in. It's just what they're choosing to be in by that desire. So anyway, that's a cool one I wanted to bring to your attention. But this is another one that's really gets to the core of a lot of very important spiritual teachings for your ascension. The facility of faith or will needs to be understood, nourished, and developed in order to have an entity which seeks past the boundary of third density. Those entities who do not do their homework, be they ever so amiable or likable, shall not cross. So isn't this interesting? And this is book 4, session 82, page 71. The facility of faith or will needs to be understood, nourished, and developed in order to go past third density. Those entities who do not do the homework, no matter how likable they are, will not cross. So there's two different concepts here. Ra gives you so much in so few words. Faith and will are completely different things. Faith would be the idea of an abiding belief in the greater goodness and the greater spiritual unity of creation. Faith is essentially, I mean, in Tibetan terms, they say ultimately you must transcend hope and fear. And I would kind of put hope in a similar box as faith. They're not exactly the same, but they're kind of the same. They have similar characteristics. Hope would be expecting that good things are going to happen. You're hoping that something is going to happen. You're hoping that you're going to have a success. You're hoping, whereas faith is actually, it is the transcension of hope, because faith is, you know that things are going to be okay. You don't have to hope for it. You know it's okay. And faith also transcends fear. So faith actually gets out of that Tibetan knot where they say transcend hope and transcend fear. Faith is the abiding knowledge, the knowingness that the universe is good. So, and this is just to make it to 4D, you guys. Just 4D. If you don't have faith, if you doubt the universe, if you doubt that there's an afterlife, if you doubt what's going on, then, and if you want to ascend, okay, then you must, and they don't use the word must very much, but this is a case where the must energy is in the quote. You must cultivate faith. Now, how do you cultivate faith? Through will, the exercising of the will. The will is so important in Law of One teachings, because will is the idea of projecting your energy, projecting your consciousness, projecting your desire into the world to take action, to boldly move on an idea, to not just be resigned to your fate, whatever you think fate is. Ultimately, like they say in Terminator 2, there is no fate, right? When she carves it in to the wood with a knife. I would agree with that. The universe already happened. The creator is all there is. There is no space, there is no time. And yet we are experiencing the nowness of the universe, the nowness of all time being instantaneous. We are experiencing that in the illusion of apparent duration. So each moment of apparent duration is the now. So that's the paradox. There's only one moment, there's only one now, but we can only process it in duration right now. So will is a very important thing, and they also talk a lot about discipline in the Law of One, the disciplined personality. If you don't have discipline, what's going to happen? Your house is a mess. Look around your house right now. See if I caught you, right? I want you right now to look around the room as you're watching this show. How disciplined is your space? How clean is it? How uncluttered is it? How much do you put of yourself into your space? Or how much have you let things go? And this is a very important point. So the exercising of will is the exercising of discipline. It's the exercising of communicating, going out and making things happen, doing your good work in the world, making the dream come alive. And faith is the belief, well, the knowingness. It's not a belief anymore. It's the knowingness of how this is going to work. You have to look at all the different things that have happened to you, all the different things that have occurred in your life, and then see how all the pieces fit together, and that when you connect the dots and you link it all up, you are left with an undeniable conclusion, which is that there is something going on. You are not alone. There is a higher purpose. There is a higher power. And you accept that. It is a fact. It is an understanding. And that is doing the homework. Those entities who do not do the homework, be they ever so amiable or likable, shall not cross into fourth density. Where else are you going to get this but the law of one? I mean, this is one of those things where it's very particular, it's very specific. You have to have faith, you have to have will, you have to be disciplined, or you're simply not ready for the ascension. That's a pretty heavy one to lay on people. All right, and then we got a few minutes before the break time, so just hang in there a couple minutes longer and then we're good. Those entities who are unbalanced, especially as to the primary rays, this is a very important discussion. Elizabeth, I want you to hear this. Well, blue is kind of like, yeah, so it's, indigo is kind of between the yellow and the blue, so it's, you could sort of say the blue encompasses indigo as well. Those entities who are unbalanced in the primary rays in particular will not be capable of sustaining the impact of love and light of intelligent infinity to the extent necessary for, notice the wording, the impact of the love and light of intelligent infinity. That is the solar flash. That is the energetic blast, the trumpet blast referred to in the Bible, the impact of that energy hitting you. Now, I wouldn't go too far on this, okay, but one of the things that Corey got from the inner earth priestess Kari, and I do believe this is real, because again, if you haven't heard the story, maybe we'll do this after the break, Elizabeth has had tons of experiences with these same beings. They were able to bend the laws of free will more than usual with Corey, where they could actually put him up there and have him have physical experiences in his body. Whereas we, Beth and I, are getting this telepathically in dreams, that kind of stuff. We haven't had the physical boarding of a ship take place. And the 20-year time loop thing that happened to me before said, don't expect us to do this for you, David, until everybody who's going to ascend has made it through the ascension portal. After that, then you get to experience the kind of things that Corey's having, but not before. And they told me this 20 years ago, but it was very obviously talking about Corey. So anyway, the inner earth priestess Kari did say that when the solar flash takes place, that if you have a lot of metals, heavy metals in your body, that can impact the ascension process and cause, the metals can actually burn from the impact of intelligent infinity, and thus cause you to lose your physical body, to not be able to transmute your physical body through the solar flash. So again, that gets into the sacred diet, which we're going to have a lot more on. I'm not doing it in this particular one. This is a philosophical module, okay? But you need to be focused on the healthy diet. It's very important. The toxic standard American diet, or SAD, loads you up with heavy metals. And so if you have that, then it's very important to get off of conventional produce. I cannot say this strongly enough. You go and watch a movie like Secret Ingredients.
Yeah.
Okay?
We'll give them a movie list.
Yeah, we'll give you a movie list. It's one of the required things, okay? if you don't do your homework, you're not going to cross, right? All of the conventional produce now is loaded with this stuff called glyphosate. You probably know this. But what we didn't realize until we saw this movie is just how deadly conventional produce really is. It's crazy. You really have to eat organic. It's like there is no choice. Everything that you do should be organic because you're going to be getting a lot less of these heavy metals. You're going to be getting a lot less of the toxic chemicals like glyphosate. And then by drinking really good quality water, which is not just reverse osmosis either. You really want to have alkalized water, okay? Very important, like spring water or alkaline water. If you just do purified water, it actually will demineralize important minerals in your body. But anyway, the alkaline water will actually start to pull these heavy metals out of your body. And apparently, if you have too many of them, you will not enjoy the solar flash. You will burn up from it.
What about titanium hips?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you have a titanium hip, if you have implants like that, your body is going to be activated. That's just one small area, okay? Your light body can easily compensate for that. The idea of heavy metals through your entire bloodstream in every cell is what we're talking about, not certain parts, that would be in your body in a certain place. So, but look also at this quote, because this is a fascinating thing that the Law of One says that I usually don't get into. The primary chakras, red, yellow, and blue, being the main keys that you need to have in order to be ascension compatible. Now, the red color has to do with security, the feeling of security, the feeling of how safe you are in the world, and the ability to take care of your basic physical needs. So your red ray can be blocked if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't take care of your diet, if you don't take care of your sacred boundaries, if you are vulnerable to predators, if you are not able to fend off attacks, all that stuff is not ministering to your safety. That is a red ray blockage. And so you don't want to become somebody who is top heavy, where you're activating your higher chakras, but you're neglecting your physical body.
Breast implants.
Breast implants, you're still going to ascend with breast implants. Don't worry about that. So the red chakra, again, is the primal essence of taking care of yourself, keeping yourself safe, making sure that you minister to your physical needs, that you're doing the work you need to do in the world, that you are earning money, spending money, participating in society. You're not a mooch. You're not living off of other people. You are engaged in the physical world. Now the yellow, okay? Yellow is very important because the yellow ray imbalance is domination and power over others. The yellow center has to do with social activity. And so if you have any type of unbalance in your yellow center, then you have a desire to manipulate and control other people for your own gain. So that, again, if you have that type of selfishness, you will not be able to sustain the impact of intelligent infinity to go through the ascension. Now, there is something that Corey was told by Kari that he told me that he did not want to go public with. It totally relates to this, because what they said to him was, anyone who would be commonly identified as narcissistic or egotistical is not going to make it. Narcissists will not ascend. If you are narcissistic, that means that you have a yellow ray blockage, just like the root ray, and you are deliberately trying to get others to take care of you. You are deliberately trying to get them to pick up after you, to cook and clean for you, to minister to your emotional needs. If your idea of a conversation is that you're always injecting personal anecdotes when somebody tries to tell you something, the constant need to infuse yourself into the conversation, to steer everything back to, that's so funny you should say that because I da-da-da-da-da. Just listen. That's a yellow ray and blockage. If you are always trying to, if you're so insecure that you're always trying to read yourself into a conversation, you're always trying to say, well, that's funny because I did. No. You're not going to make it. You cannot sustain the impact. Narcissism, ego, long rambling monologues, not letting other people talk. Guaranteed you're not going to make it. Guaranteed. We had a very unpleasant experience this past weekend. We're not going to go into detail, but guaranteed that that particular individual is not going to ascend. Guaranteed. Despite what they thought, which was a lot. Okay, so then the primary chakras, blue, of course, kind of falls in between indigo and the light blue, but really in terms of intervals, you have red, orange, okay, so orange is in the middle, then you have yellow, then you have green, then you have light blue. So light blue is really the primary color that's at work here, okay, not the dark blue, but it's kind of, again, in between. So the imbalance in the blue center, if you have an imbalance in the blue center, the primary blue, you will not be able to sustain the impact of the ascension blast. So what does that mean? That means all this stuff about the sacred boundaries, all this stuff about honor, wisdom, communication, your duty, it's a necessity that you have activated your throat chakra, that you can communicate fearlessly to others. It's all about the communications, very important part of this. It is a necessity that to some degree you have taken on honorable work, that you're trying to help other people, that you are not living alone, you are not living without mirrors, that you are engaging in communication, you are interacting with people. A blue-ray blockage would be somebody who is very isolated, who does not communicate, who does not have good boundaries. You have to nail these fundamentals down in order to sustain the impact of love and light necessary for ascension. And with that, we are at the 2.5 hour mark. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back with more stuff. I'm just going to leave the camera running, but we'll be back in just a bit. 5 minutes. So I'll give you 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. Thanks, everybody.